Hi, this is Barbara from Midsummer Farm in Warwick, New York. We're actually in the final stages right now of planning and scheduling our Permaculture Design Certification course, or PDC. And we're going to be accepting registrations or opening for registration next week, so we're very excited. This is also kind of an exciting time period on the farm because we're transitioning right now from the summer vegetables into the fall vegetables. We're switching from the summer hot weather production where we're growing our tomatoes and peppers and hot weather vegetables like that into our cold crops again. And it's kind of important. It's kind of our plan for having a 4-season farm, a winter production farm, a year-round production farm. This concept's great. And I think it's really important. I don't want to have to go to the grocery store in the middle of winter. I want to have my own clean, healthy, organic, nutrient-dense food at that point, as well as in the summertime. And even from a farming perspective, it gives you an ability to have a little bit of income in the wintertime. You could do a winter CSA if you wanted to, or something like that. So it makes a lot of sense to work on winter weather. And there's plenty of crops that really match that kind of growing. You're not going to be growing something like tomatoes, but because it just is very inefficient. But growing broccoli, things like that, works out really, really well. So today I just wanted to give you a couple of my main tips for growing seasonally. And the first one, I guess I'll discuss my schedule for this. I usually start my seeds for the fall production or winter production garden on the 4th of July weekend. That's kind of my jumping off point. And it usually takes me about a week and a half to get all the seeds in and planted. But, around that time works out great. You want to transplant them from the seed cells, so these are the seed cells, into some kind of pot in about 4 to 5 weeks. And then from the pot, you're going to transplant them into your field, your garden, your cold frame, toward the end of August. If it goes a little bit into September, it's okay. If it's a little bit earlier than that, it's okay. Earlier, you're risking the plants growing in too hot weather. So that's the whole thing with the cold crops, is that they like that cool weather growing. As much growth as you can get in the cooler weather, the better for them. So that's actually why we do that double transplanting stage. And you also just want to choose varieties that are cool weather varieties. You don't want to choose something that's inefficient, that's going to use up a ton of resources. It's going to use up a ton of your time and effort, as well as resources like electricity and oil and propane. So you could, grow tomatoes in the middle of winter time, but you would need all kinds of artificial lighting. You would need tons of heat. Maybe I'll save the tomatoes for the summertime, and I'll grow something like broccoli. Broccoli is something that I love. I can eat it every day. It likes to grow in cool weather. It doesn't mind shorter daylight hours, and really tastes better when you grow it in cool weather. You get that little bit of little tiny tinge of frost below freezing temperatures, and the broccoli becomes sweet and wonderful. And it's nothing like the stuff in the store, which is expensive and old usually. It's always just the big-headed type, and it never gets really sweet because it's grown in California. They don't get frost there. So, it really does. It's a great crop to grow. And there's a bunch of other crops that actually grow as well. I mean, broccoli is probably my favorite. There's cauliflower, of course, all the brassicas, all the cruciferous vegetables. So cauliflower, kale, collards, Brussels sprouts. They all have great versions of themselves, great varietals that will grow in the wintertime. And really worth it. Nutrient dense, great foods, really worth the effort that you're going to put into them. Lettuce is another one that I like to grow, and lettuce is lovely because it only really makes use of about 8 hours of daylight, sunlight hours. So unlike broccoli, which can go a little dormant if it gets under that 11-hour-a-day mark, the lettuce is going to keep on, growing right through it, and nothing beats nice, fresh, delicious lettuce. Again, something that you really can't find a comparable in the grocery store. Chicories are another one. They're usually old and expensive in grocery stores. They are wonderful to have growing in cold frames and in your greenhouse throughout the winter months, especially for the holiday season. And of course onions. I always have to grow some extra onions. We grow the summer bulbing onions that we can store, but having that fresh green onion flavor in the middle of winter. Last year we were actually going out in the snow and digging through the snow and pulling out perennial scallions, which is really, really a blessing. So once you have an idea of what types of plants you want to be growing, what types of vegetables you want to be growing during these winter months, you want to think about, there's really two major timing things that you're going to be thinking about next. The first one is some plants are going to be quick growing, where you plant them now and you harvest them around Thanksgiving, so it's kind of a fall harvest. And other plants are things that you would plant now. They're going to grow out to they're kind of mature, like in the middle of winter, and then they're going to go dormant as the daylight hours decrease and the temperatures really drop. But once the daylight hours increase in the spring and the temperatures start to warm up, you're going to suddenly have these crops coming into fruition. You're going to be able to harvest them in March, and that's a good time to harvest things. It's, if you stored up a bunch of food during the course of the winter, your stores are getting low, they're getting depleted. You could go out there and find something green, find something nutritious when really not much else is coming up. It's a wonderful blessing, and it's again a great thing to sort of really round out your whole season of eating and seasonal eating and producing and harvesting. So it makes a lot of sense to kind of do both if you can. One way to notice that is in your seed catalog, you have these days to harvest in little description boxes. If you see a days to harvest that's 60 to 90 days, that's going to be something that you would be growing now to harvest in the fall. 60 to 90 days, that's 2 to 3 months. That's an early fall harvesting kind of crop. Other ones, even on the same page, you see 220 days, 250 days. Those are the ones that you're going to be growing now and then harvesting next spring after they overwinter. Often it'll just state that too in the catalog. One thing to note with these days to harvest is that there is an assumption that you know that this is something that's going to be transplanted or not. So these days to harvest for a crop that is never transplanted, something like arugula that really is direct seeded into the ground, and then you harvest the plants after that. Those things, the days to harvest are seed to harvesting. With things that are always or usually transplanted, so you would plant your seeds in seed trays, grow them out, and then transplant them out to the field. Usually those days on the catalog are transplanted to harvest. Just to note that there's some discrepancy there and some assumptions that were made. And of course these dates, you have to kind of take them as far as, a million things could come in and disrupt this process, whether it's temperature or bugs or whatever. So it's just to give you a good idea of where you're going with, a good jumping off point, basically. And by the way, the territorial catalog for this fall was really useful. I thought it had great information just how to plant for the fall. It's not a certified organic seed. There's some certified organic though now, and it's non-GMO seed, 100%, which is really kind of nice. So a great catalog for this fall. So I am planting these varieties that I am planting this fall to be planted in a couple different spots. Some are going to go out into the field or into exposed raised beds in the elements. Some are going to be going into cold frames, and some are going to be coming in here into the greenhouse, which is a cold greenhouse in the wintertime. The lowest temperatures that it gets to are about 33 degrees. I'm doing this as kind of a redundancy, as a backup, as providing diversity and variety. And this is actually where I was first struck by the effectiveness of the permaculture principles, because I was always doing experimentation. I was always drawn to kind of this diversity, but there was never a plan. There was never a rhyme or reason to it. So taking the permaculture design principles and applying them to these regular processes, these regular activities that you're doing, it takes the stress out. It takes the guesswork out, where you're doing things with an expectation, and now you're getting the production that you were expecting. You have a plan in place, and it falls into place beautifully. So this is one of the things that just really makes permaculture magical. It really gives it a real focus when you're using it and applying it to this type of practical activity. Which is one of our big focuses for our permaculture classes. We want to keep it very practical, very hands-on, very locally centered, and even very business centered. We want to make it part of the whole business development of if somebody was trying to start a small farm or start a holistically minded business. It's all part of the principles, can all be applied to all these different aspects of life, which is kind of a beautiful thing. So I just thought I would go over really quickly how the transplanting process goes, my general seed starting process. These are some broccoli seedlings. I have them in the 128 trays, which are about an inch. You can see that they're nice deep inch trays. Plant them in there. Again, I did that around the 4th of July or so. And you just want to transplant them once they get like a nice root that holds together nicely. Couple real leaves. These are the seed leaves. They're kind of dying off slowly on the sides. And I plant them into 3 1/4 inch pots. And just basically what I'm doing is I'm planting them up to the seed leaf. So all that lower stem gets buried because it all can just form extra root now. I'm using a knife to get them out of the trays just so I'm not damaging anything by yanking it too hard. This is a perfect seedling. The roots are holding, it's like perfect because the roots are holding together, holding the dirt in place. Nice and sturdy little seedling. I'm just going to pop that in there. A little bit extra soil around. Firm them into place. And that's all it is to it. And you could take the seedlings straight from here and plant them directly into your raised beds, directly into your garden. I'm going to plant some of them directly into the greenhouse beds in here because the greenhouse is very protected. But the reason why I'm doing this step mostly for the outside plants is because I'm giving them the extra protection, and I'm also giving them the ability for me to keep them a little bit cooler than if they were out in the sunny field right now. It is August. It is hot. It's humid. The bug pressure is huge right now. So, I mean, a bug can damage something this small really fast. I mean, the cabbage butterflies are all over the place in here, wildly trying to lay eggs on the seedlings. So it just gives them a little bit of an extra boost. They don't have to deal with all those stresses. They can deal with just growing and getting bigger right now. The transplanting process itself, because we're moving those root balls, they were all perfectly together. I wasn't doing a lot of disturbing of the roots or damaging of the roots. That's no stress for them. And they get into the new pots, and it's almost like you just cultivate around them in the garden. Like it just increases growth, gives them a little boost. And they could grow in these pots for 3 weeks easily with no problems. After about 4 weeks, I'd probably think about doing a little bit of fertilizer. But at that point, we'd probably be ready to plant them out in the garden anyway. And it kind of will give you a jump. Even on the days to harvest, it'll probably take a week or 2 off just because you did this extra stage. So it's more work, but it really does work out really good in the long run because you're going to put all this effort into these plants. They might as well be as strong and as healthy as possible when you're actually putting them out into the garden. And so give it a try. The plants that I'm actually selling at my plant and seedling sale, our second spring sale, which is going to be, and I call it second spring because we're kind of repeating the same tasks that we do in the springtime in the fall. And the same process, I do the same process for all my seedlings. The seedlings I'm selling at the sale are produced in the exact same way that I produce them for myself, for my own household, and for my CSA program. So they're all kind of designed for this extra protection, this extra growth, this good boosting of nice, healthy, strong, ready-to-go seedlings. And yeah, for people, if you want to start your own seedlings, we do a really popular workshop here at the farm, and I'm actually in the process of videotaping that now and trying to do an online version so that even if we don't have one scheduled, you'll be able to watch the workshop and start your own seeds successfully, because there's a lot out there about seed starting which just doesn't work. This process we've kind of pulled together over the years is highly effective and has really, I mean, it works out perfectly. I highly recommend it. And so definitely, if you have a bigger garden, it's really cost effective to start your own seeds and set yourself up a little seed starting area in your house. Um, and so I hope that this gets you sort of started with a nice strong fall garden. Our PDC is actually starting this fall, which I plan to start in the fall because it's a great starting time. Um, the springtime seems like it should be the starting time for kind of a nature food production centered course, but springtime is so busy. It's so full of doing and activity that it just like I like to do it in the fall. We have some of the doing, some of the activity, but a lot of the planning and plotting and designing can go into it. And I also wanted to plan the course, so we do a lot of classes in the middle of winter out here in the greenhouse. It's a great environment. I hope it's going to be healthy and inspirational as we go through the permaculture principles and go through these processes. Thanks so much for listening.